So, hi everybody. So this session is gonna be in English. I hope you're gonna enjoy it. So maybe we can start with a quick introduction. I'm Emre, one of the founders at Payrails, which is a modular payment company from Berlin. And I have today with me Deimantė.
Hi everyone, so my name is Deimantė. I'm coming from Vinted. I'm working there as a group product manager in payments. And we are also partnering with Payrails, so that's why today I'm here.
So we're gonna touch upon how Vinted scaled payments across to Europe. So what are the obstacles they face and how did they overcome them? It's gonna be about the localization of payments in Europe. So to start with, my first question to Deimantė, as a marketplace, which is Vinted growing insanely high pace in Europe. So while growing the business, what are the challenges that you face and how did you scale the payments while the operations are expanding in different countries? So when you introduce a new market, this fragmentation, the payment acceptance, fraud, payout, reconciliation, how did you deal with that?
I think to start talk about it, I want to go back a little bit. So when we started at Vinted, I was not even working there at that time. But there were, of course, some countries that we started to offer payment options for buying the items. We started with France, so we selected the PSP or the payment provider that was offering all the capabilities that we needed at that time. And that was working for quite some time, obviously. Then we wanted to expand to new countries. And there we also have some new things that we need to deal with. For instance, when we go to North, Central, or Eastern Europe more, so you have a lot of different currencies. That's one thing. So of course you need to deal with all the FXs, you need to understand how to conversion works, you need to PSP that can handle that, so that you would allow payments from different countries and you would for the buyers, and then you would also allow payouts for the sellers, because both sides have to be happy, right? So then when we scaled, of course, we got new PSPs. So we, at some point, we had blocks. So we had like PSP in more Western Europe, and then another PSP in Eastern Europe. And then at some point, we realized that we are a bit at risk that if something happened to this PSP, or I don't know, they have a major outage or something happens there, we have a risk that we don't know how to, we don't have the option to provide payments to our users. So that's why we actually introduced another PSP, just to make it more complex. But that also allows us to minimize the risk that if something happens to one of the providers, we still can acquire funds and the buyer still can buy items. And of course, the payouts is also for the sellers insured. So there are a lot of things that we thought about when we scaled the marketplace. Of course, the countries, they also have not only, that you need to have capabilities technically, but you also need to provide some specific payment methods. So that was also one of the things that we had to ensure, because we know that everybody uses cards, Apple Pay, Google Pay nowadays, but also there are a lot of countries that have some more local payment methods. We can take Poland, for instance, that if you go to Poland, you cannot go there without BLIK. And of course, you need to make sure that the providers that you are partnering with, they can offer also all the available payment methods for the users.
Which component was the most challenging? Fraud, payout, payment methods, integration with PSPs? For you, which one that you don't want to redo?
That's a good question. That I don't want to redo. I think actually all of them, they were in a sense a bit of the, challenging parts, because if we take fraud, for instance, so if you know the fraud patterns or some people that they are taking the fraudulent behavior on the platform, but then you go to other countries and the patterns are totally different. So basically you need to be like very active, vigilant to understand what happens there. You need to know the market. So fraud is always a challenge, and if you open the new market, this challenge still exists. But I think also the local payment methods, this is something that we have to provide. We always think when we enter any new market, we always think what is the basic minimum that we can enter the market with. If there's, those global payment methods that we already have, that's fine, we already have them. But in some cases, you cannot go only with that, so we also need to provide something local. So that's also a challenge. But I think the challenge is, to enter the market is one thing, but I think that for us, at some point, we really saw the risk, as I mentioned, about having one PSP in region. So I think this part, I'm very happy and that we are far away now with all the integrations, and we already solved the problem with having interchangeably PSPs that we can route them to one or the other. So we have a lot more flexibility and resilience in the payment ecosystem.
So then essentially you have business objectives, business continuity is one of them, and you're growing your business stack, and in every country or regional, so you have different PSPs you need to integrate into platform. So that brings to the status quo that you need to abstract different components from your business, right? And that essentially helps you to build a modularity. So here with Vinted, our core of partnership, helping them to abstract the tokenization. One of the business component, helping them to change between the PSPs in an easy way without having a disruption and offering the business continuity. So still staying in this modularity. Vinted is a marketplace, but you guys also have Vinted Pay as a financial institution. And here regulation is another challenge for you that you need to deal with. How do you handle that while scaling your operations?
Well, we build. Yeah, so with Vinted Pay, of course, this is the product that is ongoing with all the building and improvements. So the regulations also is a big part of it. So obviously, if you want to operate in some of the markets, you do need to comply with the regulations. So it depends. Sometimes they use also other providers to have all the functions working. Some things are built in-house, but when we talk, for instance, take KYC, KYB, obviously that also differs per country. So that also requires a bit of a knowledge, what you need to have for each segment or what you need to have for each country. But in general, so we have both sides actually. Not only Vinted Pay has to deal with it, but also when we work with the PSPs, we also need to ensure that they can support us with the KYC, KYB, because we kind of outsource that functionality to them. But in general, we are also looking from the Vinted side always that we have to, our PSPs or ourselves, we have to be compliant with all the regulations there.
It's also highly localized, right? So every country has different set of requirements in the KYB,
Exactly.
KYC part. Anybody here sell anything on Vinted or buy anything on Vinted? Oh, nice. I hope you're happy with the experience. Cool. So again, checkout, right? So the most important component for you to drive the conversion. So how do you make sure you offer the right payment method in the right sequence in the checkout page?
Very good question. First of all, we explore the market. As I said, when we enter, first explore the market, we define the base. So what are the bases that we need to have, and the base could be different things. In some cases, it's only cards and Apple Pay, Google Pay. In other cases, it could be Apple Pay, Google Pay, cards, and 3 other different payment methods. But in general, so we explore the market. We do also a lot of experimentation, and we always review that. So we always keep the pace, what's happening in payment ecosystem, in what are the new providers that they are offering, what are new payment methods, and every I wouldn't say every year, but quite often new payment methods appear, right? So we had the wave of open banking, everybody knows it. So we also explored a bit with that one. We saw if that actually gets any traction, because also what we noticed from our experience that even if the payment method is very popular, there's a lot of hype, that we have in industry. They also promoting themselves. They saying that this is the new world, the new cards, and they're gonna beat the cards, and then they're gonna remove the cards. Well, that hasn't happened yet in many countries. In some countries, this is not that popular, but in other countries, they still like the prevalent payment method. But and we test it and we see how the acceptance is from the buyers, because what we noticed, as I said, that not necessarily if the payment method is very hyped and something that we need to have, it actually works on Vinted. So we also need to know our segment, we need to know our buyers, we see how they react. Do we get actually new buyers attracted to Vinted because of the specific payment method? Do we have the movement between the payment methods that we see, what happens there? And we don't do anything blindly, that's for sure. So we always evaluate, we always see what happens. We also see, what's the sentiment of the users, how they react to the new payment methods. And yeah, I think that's also actually a very big part of the checkout and the conversion. Of course, it's not only selection, so the payment has to go through. That's the most important part. Even if you select the payment method and sometimes it fails, so then it doesn't help.
You did some experiments with Klarna, right?
Yeah.
So what was the result? What did you see? So what has changed after offering Klarna? So does it affect the customer acquisition? Does it affect the recovery for the failed card payments? Does it affect the average size of the basket value?
With Klarna, we had some specific experiments, and with Klarna, we mainly did that in Germany because we knew that...
To reduce PayPal share?
Well, we didn't reduce the share, but there were other reasons for that. But Klarna is very popular, actually, in Germany. And we, for quite some time, we also wanted to infuse a bit Germany more. They wouldn't use cards as much as in other countries, for instance, because they have PayPal, they love PayPal, they want to use it. And but we noticed that younger generation uses a bit different payment methods, and Klarna was more popular there. And at first we wanted to do the test for the higher value items, just saying that, this is buy now, pay later, let's see how it evolves, maybe it's more working for the more expensive items. But reality is that Klarna is used not even for the more expensive items. It's actually used for any payment that you do, and it is becoming more popular. It still doesn't beat the PayPal, at least what we see.
I have been in Germany for the last 8 years. Two things has never changed. People queuing in front of the ATM, withdrawing their cash, and people selecting PayPal for online payments. These two hasn't changed. I don't think anything can beat that.
Well, we'll see.
Cool. So, in your business, I guess it is very frequent, right? So as a user, I can often come to platform, and of course, it's not as frequent as food delivery, but still, as a user, I can come to platform and buy new items. So that essentially is encouraging me to become a repeated customer. So, and I believe in that context, storing the card credentials, offering faster checkout is very crucial. So how do you see the ratio between the customers storing their card and customers doesn't want to store the card? Is there any resistance from the customers, or they trust the Vinted platform and store their card?
I think if we look into the percentage, well, actually we have interesting numbers here. So we definitely have, if we look into the cards, I cannot say per markets, let's talk more generic. We have, I think, more one-time use cards. So basically, they are not saving that on the platform. But if you look into the payments, what's the percentage of the payments that are processed with single card and then the saved card? Of course, the saved cards, they process a lot more. So from the payments, we also would have the assumption that most people are saving cards, but if you look actually at the button that they click, it's not that they always do it. But I think it's also some personal choices that people do, and not everybody wants to, in general, save their details on the platform. But when it comes to saving details on our platform, so of course we use all the PSPs that are certified. So we also see that this is a safe environment for you to save cards. We also do tokenization with Payrails, and that allowed us not only to get more flexibility, because when I said that we have different PSPs, that also actually put us in a position at some point that we were locking in our users to specific PSP. So for instance, if the buyer A would buy the item and then we would route through PSP A, then his card would be stored on the PSP A. And then we cannot reuse it on the PSP B if we see that PSP A is down. But with Payrails, what we did, so we started saving the card details on like external vault, and then we could start reusing the same card details. We use the token, and then we can use those tokens to different PSPs. So that also gave us a bit more flexibility, and it didn't change the level of security because it's secured. We use not raw card details that you could, let's say, intercept during the way and then maybe steal them. We use only tokens, and then gives a lot more security for the system itself.
You don't have to invest in the compliance piece, right? So you can do more experiments on the PSP and payment method.
We still need, but not to that deep level.
Anybody here doesn't want to store the card credential? Or you are okay to store your credentials in the website that you are using often? You don't want? Okay, let's talk later, so I really wonder.
But I think here we also have another direction that nowadays everybody uses phones. So people actually are using a lot more now Apple Pay, for instance, or Google Pay. We also can see that in numbers, that this part is also growing.
Apple Pay is significantly increasing. So in some countries we are seeing huge adoption. For instance, in Saudi, we even have seen the ratio of 70% for Apple Pay. So without Apple Pay, practically you cannot have any smooth checkout experience. Imagine in Saudi, 70%, insane. So in the marketplace, yeah, when it comes to payments, we always talk about the APMs, we always talk about the frictionless checkout, but in your ecosystem, it's also very crucial to satisfy the seller. So, and while scaling operations across different countries, you said Eastern Europe, Western Europe, right? In Eastern Europe, you have the local currencies. So in Poland, in Romania. So how do you handle that? How do you handle the FX, faster payouts, efficient payout process?
Well, for now, we rely a lot still on our PSPs to do that. But I think it's also one of the things that we definitely look from both sides. So as you mentioned, for the buyers, we look into more the acquiring part. So basically having all the payment methods in place, putting them on the checkout, sorting them, providing everything that a user needs, providing the full journey, guide them through the journey. But for the sellers, the most important part obviously is the payouts. And that part, I think, what we are constantly also working and reviewing. And actually here, I wouldn't say that we had major problems in the past, at least 2 years that I'm working there. But this is the most important part, of course, is to be on time and to be transparent. So transparent on the FXs, because we also allow the trading between countries. So obviously that there are different currencies there. So you know what we say for the sellers or what sellers expect, they should get what they expect, obviously. And of course the trust put in the platform that they would get the payment on time. So I think that's the most important part. And if something happens along the way, that they would understand what happened, that we have the communication and so on. But for sure, the sellers, the most important part, the order is done, and then you immediately would get some questions.
It is like salary payments, right? If your salary delay 1 day, you get really nervous about your company. So it's the same notion. So then if we summarize, so as a marketplace, you have pay in and pay out, and in between you have the KYC, KYB onboarding, 3 main components, and these 3 of them highly influenced by the localization. So you need to connect with different partners, and all these partners, the way that they connected with you is different, then you need to abstract every single pieces. It's quite difficult. So which part is your favorite? Payment acceptance, payout, or onboarding? I don't think onboarding and KYC.
That's regulation, right? But there are people who love regulation. For me, probably that would be acquiring, but it's because I came from acquiring side more, and I know it a lot better. But we were just talking before that probably the most interesting part is the fraud management, because obviously when you have payments, you have some fraudsters acting there as well. Why is the most interesting? Because it's so dynamic that you learn every day something new. You think that you are now very smart to prevent fraud, and then the next day they find a new way, so new loophole there. And with payments, it's also happening, of course. We are in good shape, to be honest, at Vinted with payment fraud numbers. So we have team working in that like tirelessly. We have models in place, but that also still gives you some be in the moment, that you need to understand what happens. You need to predict what might happen, and you can never sleep on that. In payments in general, you cannot really sleep. You have to be all the time on alert, because we all know that if payment doesn't work, then you don't generate any revenue, and sellers and buyers are not happy. So that's always a bit on intense path. But yeah, I think the fraud now it's very interesting.
Okay, so now the most challenging question. You need to tell us about feature, but without saying agentic, without saying AI. I think we all heard enough, right? So there's no point to talk about agentic AI. So from your perspective, so how do you see the next decade of the growth?
It's very
no
hard.
AI, no agentic, okay? No agentic.
Yeah, but it's a very hard question. If I knew everything that we're gonna do in the decade, maybe I would be the CEO of Vinted, but I'm not. So I can speak only from the payment side, probably. So of course, Vinted is gonna grow. That's inevitable. We're gonna grow to probably new markets. We're gonna grow in size in existing markets. I do believe that the second-hand market in general is growing. We see that it's growing. I think it's becoming also more popular, and our goal is to be the first choice for the second-hand as a company. So I believe that we're gonna grow a lot. That also comes with, of course, with the challenges for payments, because we need to be able to support that growth. Not only, to be resilient system. That, of course, if we have a lot more new buyers coming in, so we need to support the load. That's first thing. We need to be more resilient in also for the new fraud patterns, and especially if we're gonna grow into other markets that we don't have right now. So that's gonna be different stories that we have. Another part that I also see is that now we are very used to have everything very fast on our phones, daily, all the deliveries and so on and so forth. So I think it's also for the payments that we need to be very good in acceptance rate. We need to be good into how much payments we can process from the first try. If we cannot process from the first try, how fast we can reactivate the payment. So I think the expectation also grows from the buyers that everything goes smoothly, and that's gonna keep being a challenge for the payments all the time. And of course, expanding the horizons in a decade, I'm sure that Vinted should be a lot more global than it is now. So that's going to be a whole new chapter of challenges that we need to face. Finding PSPs if we need them, dealing with them if we need new markets to open and so on. And even if we would stay in the same markets, I think that's going to be a lot of new challenges. Every time when we see that Vinted is growing in some new market, we get a lot of attention. Attention for the payment side means that we also get a lot of attention from the bad users. So as I said, also not only good users, but also the fraudsters. So this part is also going to be there. And we cannot avoid AI, of course, because we will also need to automate a lot things to be able to actually keep the operations in the good shape, but still support the scale that Vinted is growing.
Thanks a lot for using AI as a mean to achieve something, not as an objective. So that was it from us today. So any question, Anything that you want us to double down or you want to hear more?
Do we have mic?
Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm Benjamin from Nuvei. I was wondering, how do you orchestrate paying, and do you differentiate smart routing from APM's management when orchestrating?
Yes, so we do the orchestration in-house. We build the orchestration in-house at Vinted. So when it comes to the orchestration, I would say that mainly now we focusing on not orchestrating. Okay, let's call it orchestrating cards, because that's like the biggest still payment method in our checkout what we see. So then we build the layer in a house to basically recover mainly the card payments for that side. But we also want to expand, obviously, and for the APMs, that's also we want to do some of the orchestration for the selecting APM, not only the recovery, but because there are, depending on where you have the APM integrated, it could be PSP, direct integration, or something else, or other PSP. So then selecting the best option for the current moment. So meaning that we also want to see like the acceptance rate, what we have, that basically the current situation of the PSP. So if they are operational, if everything is working, so we also want to do the orchestration there.
Another question? Perfect. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.